Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
Hey Atlanta, say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right, we're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/smallbusiness or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Hi everybody, it's Dave here. What if I told you that you could undergo an experimental treatment that would sever your podcast feed into 2 separate Cinemile offerings? One, the main regular feed where we walk home from the movies, and another where you experience all the best TV and retro movies week in, week out. Well, what if I told you could get all that for less than the price of a cup of coffee per month? Would that be interesting? Well, if so, you should check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/thecinemile, where you can support the show and get instant access to regular TV check-ins where we look back at what we've been watching. We do a monthly retro movie that you all vote on. This month we are looking at movie musicals. And for the course of Severance Season 2 on Apple TV Plus, we're going to be doing weekly recap episodes because that's one of the best shows on TV. So if you're not watching that, please go watch it. And here is a sample of the kind of thing we're doing over there. So here is our first episode on Season 2 for free. And if you're interested in hearing more, head over to patreon.com/thecinemile. Okay, hello patrons. We are here to talk about Severance Season 2, Episode 1. So full spoilers now for all of Severance up until Season 2, Episode 1. Can I firstly just say, hello Kathy.
Hello Dave.
And can I secondly just say that this show for me is the event of 2025. I'm so excited for this. Season 1 of Severance was just groundbreaking for me, and it just it tickled me on every level. It was funny, weird, gripping, had a compelling mystery, interesting characters, one of the best cliffhanger season finales I've ever seen.
An audacious cliffhanger which left me and still slightly leaves me concerned for this season, because it's like, how do you come back from that?
That's
a big job.
And I gotta say, having watched the first episode, I'm a little disappointed. And there's some fantastic stuff in here, and we're going to get into it in detail. But I think, firstly, the burden of expectation is incredibly high. And secondly, this episode has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I'm not disappointed. I think I agree with you about how much I loved it. I think it might have been both of our best shows of the year, or the year it came out.
It was definitely my number one.
Yeah, I think it was my number one or number two. And we loved it. We recorded an episode back then about it, which is one, but this season we're going to record every week. And I'm not disappointed at all by the first episode. I just went into it expecting they've way too much to do in this episode. Like, I'm not expecting to say the intrigue of the first episode of season 1, where it's all world building. It's like, we know the world now, so what next? And I'm really impressed with what they've done. What next? I think it's really moved things along. There's a lot of playing catch up for us, which I think we all needed, and I can't wait for the next episode now.
I don't actually agree with you. I don't think they have moved, and in many ways they've moved things along, but this feels like more of a reset. It feels like at the end of episode 1 of this, we are back to where we were. They're resetting everyone. Everyone's back at their desks. Everyone's back doing the work. They're different. The stakes are different. But it feels like this episode was largely just, well, how do we get everything back to there so we can kind of do Severance again?
Well, why don't we talk about it?
Let's get into it.
So what we're going to do with this episode is first we're going to talk about the kind of structural changes of like what's different in the world. And in this episode, kind of the most obvious, immediate thing to say is this is the first ever episode that they've done where you just see innies, and that in and of itself I think is very interesting. So we're going to chat through all the changes to the world. Then we're going to go through the characters and kind of where we're at with them, all the main characters. And then we are going to talk about our predictions for the next episode and the rest of the season. And then we're both going to do our quote of the episode, because we used to love doing that for our Succession reviews. We're bringing it back.
The show is so quotable. Yeah. There was some real laugh out loud quotes in this episode.
Bringing the quote of the episode back. So, but on the changes to the world, I think the first thing is Mark is an innie. He's here and he's running, and that's where we left him at the end of the last season, and that's really cool. And it kind of shocked us into the episode, and I was even a bit confused as it was happening, and I think it was designed to be like, and what next?
Yeah.
And
some incredible bit of camera work there.
So
there were a few moments you can see they must have transitioned shots.
They have to have, like, logistically.
There's got to be some clever, but it was incredibly well executed, and like you just felt like Mark's panic looking for and also it was a great way to reorient you into the inside of the Lumen building, which is this frightening bright labyrinth of corporate nightmares.
Yeah, it's horrific. And like it's so we watched it last night, and then this morning I listened to there's a official podcast now with Ben Stiller, who's the director, and Adam Scott, who's obviously the star. And it's really good when you have a good companion podcast like that. So different from our one where we'll be critical but one where they talk through the technicality.
Yeah, keep listening to us, obviously.
Well, yeah, but like we used to love listening to the Last of Us podcast, and we used to love listening to Chernobyl podcast, because you hear the technical stuff. And actually Ben Stiller said that he works, like, it seems like Ben Stiller and the scriptwriter work really, really close in the story. And then Ben Stiller asked Adam Scott and said, like, what would you be doing? What do you think your character would be doing at the opening of this season? And Adam Scott said, I think he'd be running to the wellness centre or whatever it's called,
so
to look for his wife.
Yeah.
And actually that is what you'd be doing, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So I thought that was really interesting.
We should say the wellness centre is gone.
It's gone.
Because 5 months has passed.
Well, supposedly, and that actually leads me on to my next point.
Oh, yeah. We don't know. They're in information vacuums,
yeah,
aren't they?
I don't think 5 months
all
have
they
passed.
know is what Mr. Milkshake, as he says, is referred to by Mark W. All they know is what they're being told.
I reckon it's like 2 weeks max.
Interesting. I like that.
What do you think?
I don't know. I have no sense. Just like them, we are disorientated, much like the innies, because their world, it could be, we don't know how much time has passed between the incidents and between Mark's first encounter. We don't know how much time passed between him stepping out of the lift and back in to meet his former colleagues from season 1.
Yeah.
Like,
and we don't know, like, after he did that thing where he shouted down at the board, and then to him the next day he comes in and then his colleagues come in, but actually time could have passed that as well.
We have no sense of it.
That is really fun, because that's why I was really intrigued that this episode was just all innies, because we're like, Milkshake's our source of truth here.
And actually it's the first time we've gotten this well, correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, as far as I can recall, it's the first time we've gone into that lift and then stayed in the perspective of the innie, because normally the sort of that transition noise happens in the
Ben
effect,
Stiller
and
talked
you're
about
back
that.
to the outie.
He talked about that in the episode, and he said they do this thing where they like zoom in or zoom out if you're becoming an innie.
Yeah.
But they had never done the zoom
Stay
out,
on
zoom
the
in,
innie.
zoom out, zoom in thing that they've had to do, because they've showed him transitioning to be an outie and then back into an innie in the same shot. And Adam Scott, Ben Stiller was praising him, saying, you're really good at acting that bit. But he'd never had to do it that. So this is the first episode they've done that as well. So he said technically that was quite fun for them, because of that zooming thing. And then just to completely nerd out, I have also just spent the last 20 minutes watching the first 20 minutes again to like refamiliarize myself before we record. And actually, it's the kind of show that you can just keep watching and keep seeing.
Well, I joined in. Yeah, I came in just when you were watching it, and I sat down and we watched it
Yeah,
for 5 minutes.
like I could just watch the whole thing again, except we'd never get this episode out.
Well, let's go back then to what else has changed. So what do we know? We know that 5 months has passed.
Nominally.
Allegedly, we know we've
Milchek.
shown the Milchek shows him a newspaper that has largely been censored.
Which I have now zoomed since our first watch. We kind of let it wash all over us, and then just now I've actually paused the newspaper.
Okay, go on.
And so the photo on the newspaper is like, innies are, have been celebrated for bringing to light all this stuff.
Do you think it's fake?
It's their group photo from season 1, from the photo frame.
Oh,
it's their group photo, and they're just like superimposed onto a float.
It's got to be fake.
And then I read all the text, and the text is like, oh, they're outies are so happy they've brought this to light. It's introduced incredible reform, and the innies are now going to have such things such as field trips, sexual liberation, and then it says it gives a quote from Mark's brother-in-law with the name and it says, I can't remember his name now, but your man Mark's brother-in-law, Rick On, the author of, and it says the book we know he's definitely written, and then he goes and it names like a new book that he definitely didn't write, which is like a praise cure kind of title. So all designed to just make Mark think, oh, my brother-in-law thinks they're okay now.
It's clearly fake.
It's 100% fake. So like none of that's happened. So I think they're doing that to try and make Mark feel like, look, Mark, you really did achieve something. Now you can just go back to your macro data refinement.
Well, if that wasn't obvious, later we get that incredible video that they all get shown, voiced by Shadow the Hedgehog.
What?
Keanu Reeves. I gotta say I enjoyed every minute of that.
And they called it the
wonderful.
macro data uprising.
Yeah.
And then I think what was really freaky about that was the video also let them know that like, oh yeah, we recorded your voice, because like it's their voices.
Yeah.
It's really freaky.
And they tell them that they are no longer being recorded.
Yeah, which I 100%
also
believe.
Clearly a lie as well.
All that stuff. The other stuff that was they've nominally said they've gotten rid of all the cameras.
Yeah.
They have gotten rid of the supply closet, so it's now just a normal cupboard.
The break room, you mean?
No, the supply closet that they used to all go and huddle in.
Oh, right.
When they were talking, so there was no cameras in there where they did all their plotting, remember?
Yeah.
Now it's just, remember the Italian guy goes, oh, where can I get an ink pencil? And Mark goes, oh, supply closet, and he opens it and it's just like a shallow cupboard.
Right.
What was really interesting is Mark, when he first arrives, has 3 new colleagues, and that was like really, I thought that was a really good like way to bring us back into the world but feel Mark's confusion. But when they were talking, so 2 of those people used to be in a team together, which was Mark W and Gwendoline already knew each other and had been in a team together.
Played by Alia Shawkat from Arrested Development.
Yeah, and then they had a third guy, the Italian guy, who was in a different, so it turns out the 3 of them, that they've been in 3 different areas of Lumen. And so they say little things like the carpets are different, like that's fine. But then they say really weird stuff, which I kind of only noticed the second time I went back and listened, where they said, you know the way there's like pictures of the there's a museum.
That's what they were talking about, the museum.
Yeah, the
Egan's.
museum.
Yeah.
The Egan, sorry. Yeah. Well, Gwendoline and Mark, the other Mark, said that they had animatronic Egans. The Italian guy says, my Egan's faces were made of plates. And then the Italian guy goes, oh, we didn't have an elevator, we had a rope.
Yeah, the implication is that there's a sort of an economic hierarchy.
I don't know what the implication
within
is.
Lumen.
Why do they have faces for plates? Plates for faces.
I think that's what they're saying. It's everything in his wing was cheap. And I wonder, is it because he's a non-English speaker? Like, is there like a slums version of Lumen where they're having,
where English isn't your first language?
Well, I'm only speculating. We only have one person to guess on, but it's interesting that there is a non-English speaker who is basically sounds like he's living in a more economically deprived area of Lumen. It's very interesting.
That's really weird. Then there was another thing later on when Mark was running around the place and doing his shenanigans, and he was looking at a painting, and it says, I only realized when I think it's when the four of them got back together and they're going up to the room. It was like a painting of Keir, and there's four heads sticking out of the ground, and Keir's holding a sword. And then one of the characters reads the name of the painting, and the painting is called Keir Pardons His Betrayers. So I think they're trying to be like, oh, it's okay, Keir's all forgiving. And then Milchick says to them, you can choose if you want to remain here. And I guess that's the biggest change from season 1, because season 1, Hallie's outie was in fact like, well, fuck you, you can't get out of here. I don't care what you do to me. You're not leaving. So that they're kind of the biggest changes that I've noted.
So on the whole, they're being presented with the impression that their uprising has been successful, that they are making real change. So the changes are Miss Cobell is gone. She's been scapegoated for everything.
And like I was reminded, because again so much happened in episode 1, but when I went back there and he says, it seems like Miss Cobell wanted to have a throuple with you and your outie.
That was one of my nominations for the line of the episode.
And on that scene as well, Milchick.
No, he said, in what might be termed a throuple. Just like
so
the writing in this show
Adam
is
Scott's like,
so funny.
But what was also interesting there was Milchick, and again I only noticed on second viewing, because I think the first time we were just so overwhelmed with like we've been waiting for this show for so long that I barely took it in. He has boxes all over his office. And then, of course, we saw later about the screensaver.
Yes, so it
he
can't
ain't
have
been in that
5
office
months.
that long.
Yeah, you're dead
It's probably
right.
his like second day, if that.
Yeah.
And also Mrs. Wong, who we're obsessed with, and we'll get to her. She says it's her first day.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, Miss Huang. So she is. So this is the child deputy manager. What? As like, and this was my. I think this might be my my line of the episode is when Mark, W asks her when she brings them all into the sort of cafeteria room to have their conversation holding the ball. In which she's a fabulous actor.
She's amazing.
Like she's so creepy with that.
They talked about her in the podcast.
She's nailed the Mr. Milchick vibe.
They said she was like 15 when she recorded it.
Incredible work.
Yeah, so good.
And like fascinating new character. And when like they just got to the 5 of them in the room, and Mark W stood away. Why are you a child?
It's so good.
I think that's my line of the episode. It was so funny.
It was so funny. It was so good. And yeah, she's just kind of there and it's all really weird. And Mark's like, should children be here when he sees her? But when we finally get our characters back together, it was kind of about halfway through the episode. And like, I guess with our Mark, there's not too much to say other than he's kind of taking in what's happening around him. He makes a terrible attempt at writing a note to frame the other Mark. I don't even know why he did that. Maybe he did it to draw Milchick down so that he could leg it up to his office, because he must have known. Like Milchick goes, you didn't even disguise your handwriting.
I think it is a reminder to us that Mark S is not particularly sly or clever. Like the Mark we met in season 1, don't forget, was completely happy and diligent at his work. Never questioned anything. It was only like after a series of events in which Petey left, Helly, he starts to uncover bit by bit. Like it took him a long time to be rebellious. It is not in his nature, and as a person, he retains his outie's, I guess, core characteristics, but he doesn't have the sort of nature element, but he doesn't have any life experience. He's not particularly clever. So I totally bought that he would make a pretty pathetic play like that.
Yeah, you're right. I couldn't quite tell. And I love the way he's like, the other Mark's like, you just wanted to get the name. But then funny. He's like, excuse me, sorry, I've got a cough. He's very happy when his friends all kind of come back. But then, intriguingly, when he hugs Helly, she's very stiff.
Well, tell them your theory, and I gotta say, when second you said this, I said that has to be it.
Like I'm pretty positive that
dropped it straight away.
Most of our listeners will have the same theory. So I kind of thought it was a bit weird when she was hesitant when he like hooked her, and then when they're like, "What happened when you went outside? Like, what was your outie doing?" And obviously, we know that her outie's a baddie, and her outie's the exact opposite of her innie. and is one of the Egans, and is really awful, which we'd seen anyway in the videos earlier on before we knew she was an Egan. And she says a really weird thing like, oh, I was in my apartment watching TV, and then I went outside and it was nighttime and I spoke to a gardener. And it's like, we as viewers are like, why is she lying? That's really weird. And then actually, like, within the show, Irving goes, a gardener at nighttime.
Yeah.
Like, and he's really out of it, but even he's like, huh?
But here's where I think this lends itself against you.
But I haven't finished my case.
Oh, sorry. Please carry on. Yeah.
So I think that was like, and it was almost like maybe a rich person who's like really clueless and doesn't even know when gardeners would work. She'd be super rich, right? If she's one of them.
Yeah.
And then I only noticed this when I was rewatching it, but the first thing she nearly says is, oh, the cameras are gone, when she comes in, as if to be like, oh lads, look, we're not being filmed anymore. And then when the four of them are in the room and Milchek leaves and they're whispering, she's like, we don't need to whisper, there's no mics anymore. And they're like, yes we do. And it's like, why would Helly say that?
Yeah.
She was always the most skeptical of them.
So tell them,
Why would she
tell them
suddenly-
exactly what your theory is then.
Oh, my theory is that Helly is not severed and this is just the outie Helly coming in for some reason to fuck with them all.
Well, to survey them.
But we don't know. Like, we don't know the reason. Why are any of them... Like, I would have thought if it weren't for it needing a season 2 of a TV show, I mean, the natural result of their uprising should have just been that they were desevered.
Yeah, potentially, but we don't know what else is going on. We
We
know
have
very
nothing,
little.
Yeah.
I think
But
this is a
100%
fantastic
She's
theory.
the outie, I think.
I think it's a great theory. I think it's very likely. The thing though, when you discuss that her story to the others about being on the outside, this is the bit that doesn't add up to me, because if that were her outie, the Egan, then she would have a better story because she had time to come up with it. They had time to make a fake newspaper. They had time to make a video. They're doing everything they can to convince these people. And she comes up with a story that is instantly questioned by Irving and doesn't make sense. And I know, I see what you're saying about a rich person might not know that a gardener wouldn't be out at night, but it presents to me as something that's kind of made up on the spot. So that's a bit that makes me question your theory and think that could also just have been Innie Helly not wanting to reveal to them who she actually is because she's ashamed of it.
But they consider
and tries to make up a story on the spot.
No, but they consider their outies to be completely separate. Like, Mark's like, oh, my outie's wife side. Mark's not like my wife side.
True. But
I consider them, like, she already hates her outie before she ever even knew she was an Egan. It also could be a red herring and a double bluff on behalf of the show because they're really signposting it. Yeah. So I'm intrigued by that. So that's kind of her plot. Then we have Irving's plot, and he's just miserable and he barely says anything, and
he's essentially trying to end his existence by leaving, which was the choice that they were given, which isn't much of a choice when you think about it.
Well, it's so interesting because the whole of season 1 was almost like the Innies kind of trying to escape. And this is why I don't agree with you on what you say to, oh, well, now they're just back to the beginning again, because it's only now that I've realised, really, but for them to live,
they need to be down cannot here. Live outside of this world.
So, like, the human spirit is most of the time to stay alive. So actually, yes, it makes sense that the Innies kind of want to get back to work. Like, that's all they know. And look, Irving kind of comes around in the end, but
I thought this was quite touching.
I actually thought that he might have left and he mightn't come back.
I was thinking the same. I thought this could be the end of his character, but he did come back. I thought that was quite touching, the scene with
him and Dylan.
They
love each
in
other.
The corridor.
But see, even Helly was like, oh, I'll come too. And I was like, why would she say that? She wants to go and listen.
You're right. Look, undeniably, she was acting strangely.
Yeah,
I'll agree with you there. And I think there is a high likelihood she's the outie.
And Dylan's like, what was really interesting then was when Milchek, and that was the other new thing in the world that we forgot to say, when Milchek took Dylan and said, like,
Milchek is fantastic.
It's so good. And he said, oh, like, you're the only person who's got a spouse. Like, you can see your spouse outside.
Yeah.
Which is wild. What I'm now
trying... The outie visitor room.
I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, I understand, like, the first thing he said to Mark basically was, your outie, like, basically begged for you to come back in. And that will be because Mark, we can extrapolate that it's because Mark's
outie wants to find his wife. Yeah.
The other, okay, and Helly,
if in fact Mark outie knows that she's in there, which we don't know, because all that Innie Mark shouted was, she's alive, and now maybe some guests around him pieced that together, but they would have to piece together that he was do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's quite a few steps
we don't know if the
connect dots to connect.
We need to see the outies because we don't know.
Which basically, I hope is episode 2, surely, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Just from seeing the synopsis for next week. But like so Mark might have a reason to send his Innie back. Also, Mark still wants to be severed because he's really depressed after his wife died. Mark kind of wanted to be severed. Yeah. And then Helly, if she's actually the outie for whatever nefarious reason, wants to be in there. But why would the other two allow? Why would the other two allow their, like, why would, like, Dylan and Irving, unless they are offered, they could have been offered a lot of money.
I'll tell you what I suspect. I suspect that Irving's outie is not aware of anything. He just thinks he blacked out. Is not aware anything happened.
He was just like painting.
If we were to assume, like you've suggested, that the Lumen and Milchek and everyone has just completely covered all this up and they're spinning a load of lies to the Innies, then as far as the outside world happened, like...
Oh, you're right, because actually Dylan at the end of the last episode didn't actually leave because he was there doing the machines. So he only had that incident where he went in the closet and saw his kid.
Dylan never went into his brain. He stayed behind. Irving, all he did was leave and go to Christopher Walken's house and then went back. So his outie would just have a blackout.
Yeah, you're right.
Mark will have a bit of confusion.
Mark and Helly caused all sorts of shenanigans.
The Helly's outie will be fully aware because she said it's publicly to her.
She went up on stage.
Yeah.
And also, like, Mark's sister was talking to him. She knows, like, there's no going back on what Mark did.
Yeah. So
even if the wife thing hasn't come through.
But I don't think so. So to your point, I don't think so. Helly's outie is in control. She can send her back in whenever. Mm-hmm. Mark's outie, he probably has motivation to send him in, and Irving's outie, for all he knows, nothing has happened.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's why they're all back in there.
Yeah, that's really a good point, actually. That makes so much sense. I like that they didn't come back till halfway through, though, because the show just kind of built up the intrigue of it all for me.
Well, here's the thing, though. I found that quite disorientating, and I'm not sure it did work. And this is part of my frustration with this first episode, because it establishes in the first half this new setting, these new characters, and then drops that halfway through when I was just getting on board with it and getting into the flow, and it went
I felt
right
like Mark.
back to...
I just felt like Mark, and I was like, who are these intruders, and get them away from me.
But I presume they're going to come back and play a role later, I hope. But
maybe not. But they were good word building with all that weird stuff going on with the carpet and the ropes and the faces and...
Yes, no, but I guess I've just found that why do that at all? And I trust the show, and I trust that it's all going to make sense later, but it felt quite jarring, and I would have rather they just, if you're going to just get the gang back together, then start the episode from there. Like, I didn't see, like, they felt very disparate, the two halves of this episode.
That's interesting. My main question is, and this is where we need to start our predictions for the series, why are Lumens so obsessed with Mark? I think it's because they were doing that crazy experimentation where they had, like, his supposedly dead wife, who God knows what they've done to her, and him not recognizing each other. But now he knows the wife. And what's really weird is right at the end, when he was doing his microdata refinement, her face popped up on the screen. What is going on? Like, why do they want to satisfy Mark so much that they'll bring the other three back? Well, because I think they were initially hoping that Mark would just settle in with a new gang.
I don't think her face popped up on the screen. I think her face popped up on our screen. I thought it was like a flash for the audience. I don't believe it happened on his screen.
I think it was on his screen.
Oh, well,
I think it was part of his data.
Jump in, listeners. If you looked a bit more closely, you must rewatch that again. I didn't
rewatch that one again. But yeah, I think it's all to do with Mark, because I think they were kind of just hoping that Mark might have just settled in back on his new team. And I think the others are kind of not Helly, but the other two are kind of, from Lumen's perspective, window dressing. Though I could be wrong on that.
Well, another interesting thing we didn't really discuss is that Mark W says that they never hit their quota, not once.
Yeah.
So Mark S, Adam Scott, was heading up a team that was incredibly successful.
Yeah, they were really good.
So if we are to assume that the work they're doing is legit and is meaningful, and then that's perhaps a reason that he is a productive member of that team.
Yeah, because we still don't know what they're doing. And I love that he was called Mark S. It's so funny when someone else has the same name as you and suddenly you have to be identified by your surname. He was a bit like, why are you calling me Mark S? How dare you?
That's a funny little thread
really
to
good.
pull, because that often happens in workplaces as well.
Very good.
I mean, the guy, hands off to Dan Erickson again, for the creator of the show, because he is such a wonderful,
it's amazing
writer. It's the kind of thing you watch and you're like, if I could do this, I would die happy. Like,
yeah, and that's why I think we just need to accept that we will never ever reach the heights of season 1 because it was brand new to us. But I think I've got faith in this being a very good second season.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same. I despite the fact I've expressed some disappointment with this episode, and I think it is a bit all over the place. It is very consistent with the tone of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
We're still very much, and I trust in Keir. We trust. You know, I feel like by the end of season 2. We are going to have been delivered a very satisfying season.
I just love being back in this world and seeing all the little changes and like just the differences in the office and the sameness in the office and just that weird stuff with the balloons looked really cool. Oh my god!
So the show knows what it's doing. I have no
criticisms of this episode, honestly. Like other than fine. Like there was a huge cliffhanger over in season 1, but like I've lived long enough to know that like a true cliffhanger over like that will never really be answered. So
Are you saying cliff hangover?
Cliffhanger.
Because cliff hangover is a great expression.
It's such a sore throat. I shouldn't even be recording this. But I'm really pleased with it, and I love all the thought they put in. And it took so long because they had started filming it, and then there was the strikes, and they had to stop, and then they had to bring it back, and then they're such perfectionists, and it's such a labour of love. I haven't finished the podcast episode yet with the Ben Stiller and Adam Scott because the second section was going to be an interview with the man himself, Mr. Milkshake. So I'll have to go back and listen to that.
Oh my god, he is so good.
He's so good.
Yeah. It's the smile.
He's so good. But listen, what's your line of the episode?
Oh, my line of the episode is why are you a child?
I mean, it was
what's
fantastic
yours?
Line. My line of the episode, and just because she delivered it so coldly.
Go on.
Thanks. That's nice, Mark, but I have to remind you that I'm a supervisor,
not
a friend. That is bad.
So good.
Imagine your boss said that to you.
She is so like straight away. What a character! Yeah. What a standout character.
Iconic. And she said, "This isn't my line of the episode, but I just enjoyed it out of nowhere. Before this, I was a crossing guard."
So she seems to have memory. I assumed she was some form of severed person. Yeah, but
no, the staff aren't severed.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
There's one other.
I love when Milchek goes, "As a severed man, I have to live with what I. As an unsevered man, I have to live with you. As in, this is the burden I take on by not being severed." Thank you, Milchek.
There was one other line which I really enjoyed, which was I think it was Milchek saying this to Mark. He said, "Your outies fame has gone to your innies head."
Oh, that was brilliant. That was so
what
good.
A line.
I cannot wait for the next episode to see what the hell's going on with Mark.
I know. I'm so intrigued. This show is a fantastic mystery box.
Also, I belatedly asked Apple for screeners, but they're giving them to us. So I'm afraid we're going to go absolutely nuts and completely binge it.
Oh my god.
That is a flex.
What a flex.
Yeah. But also a fear.
See you later, guys.
It's a flex and a fear. But worry not, we will record an episode every time we watch one.
Naturally. What we would like to hear is from all of you. So please let us know. What are your theories? Do you think it's innie helly? Is it outie helly?
But any theories that are spoilers, put them in the spoiler chat on the Patreon app.
Yes.
Any general conversation about the show that's not spoilery, you can put under this post on Patreon app.
Yes. So please be wary of that. And lastly,
and the spoiler chat's already lit. It's been buzzing since last night.
That's because it's a fantastic show and everyone's watching it, as they should be. It feels like the Apple are finally also promoting a show for once. Like they're marketing this.
They're marketing it, and also they've had like bloody 3 years of people to catch up on what was an incredible season of TV. So like they really have no excuse.
They gave away free Apple TV Plus to everybody a few weekends
I
ago.
would say
They
for this.
put the whole cast in a box in Grand Central Station,
that was
which
so
was a
cool.
great stunt. Lastly, I would like to say thank you to Joe Kiley, friend and fellow patron.
And often co-host in lieu of me.
Yes, regular co-host on the episodes. For contributing our first ever patron cover of a theme song. Yeah. So it's so good that many of you might not have noticed at the start of this episode that the Severance theme music was not taken from the TV show, as I normally would. Joe sent us in himself playing it.
So cool.
On the piano.
It's amazing.
So thanks for that, Joe. Fine work. It's such a good theme.
It's incredible.
You get to the pleasure. He's graciously allowed us to use it license free.
Thank you, Joe.
Week after weekend. So you're gonna hear that now, and we look forward to talking to you all over the next week, and we'll be back very shortly.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Kush Jumbo here. My podcast Origins is where the biggest names in entertainment tell me the stories that made them who they are today. This week on Origins is KSI.
I did boxing as a joke, if that makes sense. So
No, continue.
Okay.
Did you and Tommy Fury become friends?
No. I would be sweating if I was like sitting next to another woman. I didn't know how to talk to females.
Listen to Origins with Kush Jumbo wherever you get your podcasts.